Good evening, everybody, and thank you guys for coming out this evening. As you're aware, this is the day 2 of our Civil Rights and Human Rights Symposium, where the theme is Civil Rights and Human Rights. To this we have come, from here where. Tonight, even against our competition with Omega Sci-Fi down the hallway and the basketball game across the way, we're going to forge forward with our mission here, as some of our leaders have in the past. Tonight, we have the pleasure of being in the company of Mr. George Fraser. A little bit about Dr. Fraser is that he was born in Brooklyn, New York, one of 11 children, and spent 15 years in orphanage and foster homes. He subsequently spent 20 years in leadership positions with Procter & Gamble, United Way, and Ford. He founded FraserNet Incorporated 28 years ago with a vision to lead a global networking movement that brings together diverse human resources and to increase opportunities, wealth, jobs, and resources for people of African descent. He is the producer of an annual Power Networking Conference. Dr. Fraser is also the best-selling author of 4 critically acclaimed books, including Success Runs in Our Race, Race for Success, Click, and Who Would Have Thunk It? He received more than 350 awards and citations from around the world, including being selected for the prestigious History Makes program stored at the Library of Congress. Upscale magazine named him one of the top 50 power brokers in Black America. Black Enterprise magazine called him Black America's #1 networker and featured him on a cover issue. Dr. Fraser has appeared on 7 national magazine covers. He was recently included in the Minority Business Hall of Fame and Museum and was awarded 2 honorary doctorate degrees, one in philosophy and one in human letters from Jarvis Christian College. He has been married 42 years to Nora Jean, and they have 2 grown sons. He resides currently in Cleveland, Ohio. And if you would, let's warmly welcome Mr. George C. Fraser.
Sigma man.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I am black, in case you were not entirely sure. That's actually the beauty of our culture and race, right? We come in all shapes and sizes and skin tones and hair textures. Thank you, my brother, for that introduction. I am a Sigma. Do not hold that against me. For those of you who are not, hold that to me. I was inducted as an honorary Sigma, you may know. There were 3 of us inducted at the same time. Me, Bill Clinton, and Harry Belafonte were inducted as honorary Sigmas together. And it is the greatest fraternity in the history of humankind. Anybody that would have me as a member. Remember that old joke? May God grant me the words to speak your thoughts this evening. You heard me say right at the beginning that, yes, I am black. And I always proclaim my culture because I'm going to be speaking to you out of my cultural paradigm, because I couldn't be speaking to you out of any other cultural paradigm. So with that in mind, let me begin by saying that God is first, and without God, nothing is possible. Therefore, the God in me greets the God in you. Can I get an amen? Amen. And an ashe? Ashe. All right, see, there are a couple of brothers and sisters in here hip to ashe. Okay. This is good. We had a lot of competition tonight, no question about that. There's entertainment on the campus. Our Omega brothers are doing some entertainment, is that right? Yeah. There's no party like an Omega party, because an Omega party doesn't stop. We got a basketball game tonight, right? Black folks are into basketball. And therein lies, the challenge of our people and our culture. And Oftentimes, we will spend more time investing in entertainment than we will spend in investing in our minds. But that hopefully will be short-lived, and that will change over time. Let us pray. So for those of you who are here, thank you. And know that everything happens for a reason and serves us in some special way, and we will never understand that reason looking forward, and we will only understand it looking backwards. So God has given you the power and the glory and the wisdom and the energy to be sitting in this place at this moment in time, and whomever is sitting next to you is supposed to be sitting next to you. If there's an empty seat next to you, it is supposed to be empty. Understanding that when the students are ready, the teachers will appear, not 1 minute late and not 1 minute early. So thank you for being here. I come to you this evening from, where was I? I'm on a 2-week road trip. And I'm trying to remember where I was right before I came here. Where did you fly? Fort Lauderdale. That's right. I was in Fort Lauderdale. And then prior to Fort Lauderdale, I was in Washington, D.C. And prior to Washington, D.C., I was in Baltimore. And from here, I go to Phoenix. And then from Phoenix, I go to Mexico. And then I'll be back home to my beautiful wife for 42 years around the 18th of February. But you should not be surprised. It is Black History Month. And any Negro that can string 2 sentences together is called a speaker. And you can speak for Black History Month. So if you consider yourself to be a speaker and you cannot make a killing during February, you need to find you a new profession, all right? So I'm one of those Black History Month speakers. So, but beyond that, I'm more than that. I'm not putting myself down. What I'm really trying to say is I travel about 350,000 miles a year. I speak about 150 times a year. Have 8.5 million frequent flyer miles, Mr. Hill. In the last 18 months, I've been in 171 different cities around the world, recently returning from Nigeria in Abuja, speaking for the former president of Nigeria. And if you have traveled as extensively as I have traveled, you will understand, brothers and sisters, that this is the greatest country in the world. It really is. In fact, there are no black people in the entire world doing better than we are. And I have traveled every place that black people have been dispersed. I've been to South Africa, Central Africa, East Africa, West Africa, all over North Africa, all over South America, and all over the Caribbean. And there are no black people in the entire world doing better than we are. In fact, we are the beacon of hope for every single person of African descent in the entire world. And because to whom much is given, much is required, we are morally grounded and spiritually rooted people, and we do understand that. And so I just wanted you to know that this is the best place that we could ever be. In fact, every black person around the world, for the most part, is trying to get here. There are 2 things I promise you in the context of the 45 minutes to an hour or so. I'm going to leave some time for questions. That I will be saying that you really, let me say that. I will not be saying anything that you haven't heard before. Except tonight you're going to hear it differently. Understanding that everything happens for a reason and serves us, right? So you're going to hear it differently. That's the most important thing. I'm writing a new book. The name of the book is Negro Please. N-E-G-R-O-W. Please, P-L-E-A-Z, please. And you know, if you've written books, this is my 6th book. I'm writing number 6 and 7. Number 7 will be out in 2017. Number 6 will be out in 2016. And I'm going to read to you my preliminary notes for the foreword. So you will be the first to hear something from this new book. I believe that African Americans are at a pivotal point in history. The world is not waiting for us to wake up to our power. It is time for African Americans to take a seat at the table, not only in America, but also in the global economy. Unfortunately, we continue to place our power in the hands of those that have historically oppressed us, and even worse, we continue to oppress each other. This is the meaning of internalized oppression. To continue to fall into the cultural hypnosis of thinking that white America controls our lives is a true abdication of our personal power. The reality is that each and every day is an opportunity for us to create a new and powerful story in our culture, and unless we find a way to write this story, to claim our power, there will be devastating implications for our community and the world. In other words, there is no one to save us but us. The fantastic news is that as people of African descent, we possess enormous untapped creativity and potential as individuals and as a collective network. And once we fully tap into what makes us tick, what unleashes performance in our culture, we will assume our rightful place on the global stage. Let me say that differently. White folks have done all they're going to do for black people. I hope you understand that. We have freedom, civil rights, voting rights, and public access. We will not be getting white people's money. You will have to kill them first, and you ain't killing them. That means we're going to have to compete with them. And if we're going to compete with white people, to take what is most dear and important to them, money, which they perceive as power, we're going to have to ramp up our game. We're going to have to be deeply committed to personal growth and development, constant never-ending improvement, and lifelong learning. We're going to have to be amazing at whatever it is that we do. Now, your parents and my parents said to us that we are going to have to be twice as good to get half as much. You remember your parents telling you that? Well, they were right then, and they're still right. Because if you're black and mediocre in America, you better leave. Because you're going to be marginalized in this country, and you will ultimately be destroyed. Anytime you put the education of your children in the hands of people who have historically oppressed you, you have made a mistake. We have made a mistake. You see what has happened to urban education, and they were in charge. So we're going to have to man up, and we're going to have to woman up and do the work that we're supposed to do, and then be patient. Be patient. I'm going to ask a rhetorical question. I know you know the answer to this question. How do you, or what do you think the reason was that we survived slavery? We overcame slavery. 250 years of the most oppressive, the most egregious oppression ever heaped on any human beings in the history of humankind. How do you think, and what do you think the reason was that we did that without guns or money? Very simple answer.
Well, I think that black people were very tenacious, and they had faith in God that things will eventually get better.
Good. But I'll say it simple. You're right. We were right. They were wrong. And whenever you're operating out of goodness and righteousness, you will always win. We were right, and they were wrong. How do you think we overcame or we achieved civil rights, voting rights, and public access? 1864 to 1964. Took us 100 years. It took us 5 generations. How were we able to do that? Without guns or money? Same answer. We were right. They were wrong. So this is why I know what we're talking about, what this whole symposium is about, will ultimately manifest itself because we're right and they're wrong. It will just take time. It will take time. A couple of things are going to happen, and we're going to have to speak these things into our people. And you heard I said speak them into our people because we learn differently. We are oral, auditory, visual, kinesthetic, and tactile learners. Nearly 30 years ago, I started a company called FraserNet. After 20 years in leadership positions in the public and private sector, 13 years as an executive with Procter & Gamble, 3 years as vice president of United Way of America, and 2 years as an executive with Ford. And then at 42 years old, I pivoted and started my own business after I learned my skills at the feet of the masters at whatever it is that they were doing. In the area of branding and marketing, Procter & Gamble is a beast. They are the best on the planet. What am I most proud of in my 13 years at Procter & Gamble? Not all the awards that I won. I'm not bragging, I'm just telling you what it is. What am I most proud of? The 67 African Americans I got into Procter & Gamble during my 13 years as an executive with Procter & Gamble, of which several are now vice presidents and group vice presidents. Many left Procter & Gamble after many years and did exactly what I did. That's what I'm most proud of in my 20 years of working for the man, is the opportunity I provided personally for 67 people that look like me. I was not, like so many, the spook who sat by the door. So 30 years ago, we started FraserNet. I started FraserNet. What is FraserNet? We are a principle-centered global leadership network of 61,000 top black professionals, business owners, and community leaders. We are focused on economic development through education, training, and empowerment for black people. That's what I've committed my life to. Our focus is to train and to educate and to equip black people with new skills, new thinking, and new approaches for personal, professional, and financial success in the 21st century. We have 2 goals that we have been working on for 28 years. There are only 2 things that we have been focused on. Neither of them have anything to do with civil rights or social justice. They have to do with silver rights, S-I-L-V-E-R, and power. We have plenty of wonderful organizations, of which I speak for all the time, from the NAACP to the Urban League to SCLC to the Congressional Black Caucus. This was my 41st time speaking at the Congressional Black Caucus last year. They do wonderful work on social justice and civil rights, but that's not what I'm focused on. That's not what the 61,000 people in my network are focused on. We have 2 objectives that will take black people 100 years to achieve. It will take us 3 to 5 generations to achieve these 2 objectives. And once we achieve them, we will take our people to the next level. What are those 2 objectives? First is to help black people build wealth that can be transferred intergenerationally. We're not poor, we're just broke. Our money goes in one direction, away from us, and we're some of America's most conspicuous consumers. We are a $1.1 trillion annual economy. If we were a nation, we would be the 16th richest nation in the entire world. But again, our money goes in one direction, away from us, and we're some of America's most conspicuous consumers. And we will not stop buying from people who will not support us. We are addicted vis-a-vis television and advertising and Madison Avenue to consumption. We do not produce anything that we buy, and we do not sell anything that we purchase. We just consume. We are the pistons to America's consumption engine. There was an interesting article on the front page of USA Today not long ago. I hope you saw this article. Fortunately, it was below the fold. It was about black people, baby boomers, us, and our money. And here's what this article said about Negroes in America. The black baby boomers will be the first generation of Africans in America to raise another generation of Africans in America that will not do better than them. So in the 400-year history of our people, Mr. Hill, in this country, we are the only generation to raise another generation that will be worse off. We collectively need our asses kicked. And you can count me out of that. I will not contribute to that egregious statistic. And neither must you. So the conferences and the workshops and the seminars and the websites and all the work that we have been doing are focused on how to build wealth and to manage it in such a way so that it can be transferred to future generations. That's what everybody in our network is focused on. Now, I said 61,000, right? That sounds like a lot of black people. It's not a lot of black people. When you consider that I've been at this for 30 years, I've written 5 best-selling books, I've given over 2,000 speeches, and I've traveled 8.5 million miles. So 61,000 as a percentage of 44 million black people, because that's how many are in America, is but a fraction of a percent. A fraction. We have a lot of work to do. But that does not discourage me, nor should it discourage you. Because it has always been a few of our people that have taken the masses of our people to the promised land. So I'm not discouraged by that. So that is one goal, to help us to build wealth that could be transferred intergenerationally, to solve the economic illiteracy problem in Black America. We are an economically illiterate people, as evidence on how we spend our money and what we do with our money. Let me give you a couple of examples, real-time retail examples. I don't know what BMW does for black people. I speak all over this country, every major black conference on the planet. I don't see BMW. I don't see BMWs in historically black newspaper ads. I don't hear BMWs on black radio. I don't see BMW ads on black television. I don't know what BMW does. I speak at 30 historically black colleges a year. I don't see no plaques with BMW's name on it. I don't hear about any BMW scholarships to historically black colleges. I know what Ford does. I know what Toyota does. I know what General Motors does. I know what Chrysler does. But I don't know what BMW does. But we buy more BMWs, black people, per capita, than any cultural group in America. Let me say that differently. If you're going to give me all of your money and expect nothing in return, I am simply going to take all of your money and give you nothing in return. So here's what BMW tells black advertising agencies. How do I know? Because I was a part of one. When they go to BMW and say, listen, you're selling more cars to our people than some of the best automobile companies in America that are doing all kinds of things in the black community. Can you set aside a budget for special events, for advertising in black media, etc.? They said, no, absolutely not. We don't need to give black people anything. They're going to buy our cars anyway. We don't have to do anything special. They're buying it anyway. So we get nothing from BMW, millions from Toyota, millions from Ford, and we keep buying BMWs. That's on us. White folks can't fix that. We have to fix that. So, it's consciousness. It's consciousness. People often ask me, Dr. Fraser, can you give me an example of the intergenerational transfer of wealth right now in your face today? Something that I can relate to. Sure. You have a very bright daughter, very bright son. They graduate from high school and they qualify to go to Harvard, Yale, Morehouse, Spelman. Will you be able to pay for your child's education, or will you stick them with a $200,000 college bill when they graduate from college? That's the intergenerational transfer of wealth right now. You have a beautiful son or daughter. They decide to engage and get married with someone that you really like. Are you able, as Jewish people are able to do, buy your son or daughter their first home? Can you put a down payment on your son or daughter's first home? That's the intergenerational transfer of wealth right now. We must fix this in the 21st century because the overwhelming majority of us cannot do that. What is the second thing that we're working on? We're working on helping black people become the #1 employer of black people by the end of the 21st century. Why? Because we must create work and jobs for our people, because that's the only way to raise up the poor. Jews are the #1 employer of Jews. Asians are the #1 employer of Asians. East Indians are the #1 employer of East Indians. Arabs are the #1 employer of Arabs. And every immigrant group that has ever come to this country understands this but us. We too, ultimately, within the next 100 years, must become the #1 employer of our own people. The Asian population has solved their own unemployment problem by one simple thing: Chinese restaurants. You ever go into a Chinese restaurant, which are all over America and especially where we live, and be served by anything other than a Chinese person? In fact, if you go into a Chinese restaurant and there are 4 brothers working in there, leave. Something is seriously wrong. It ain't a Chinese restaurant. I don't know what it is, but it ain't a Chinese restaurant, because they employ only their own people. By the way, that employment in just Chinese restaurants, and if you meet most of them, I love Chinese food and I always talk with the waiters and waiters. Most of them are in college. Lots of them are coming from China and just immigrating here into the United States, and they need it. They employ about 2 million of their own people just in their Chinese restaurants. By the way, we don't have any of those. We don't have any chain black-owned restaurants. We don't even own the fried chicken stuff that we invented. And nobody made fried chicken better than black people. But we do not own the franchise to fried chicken. So, we must create work and jobs for our people because that's the only way to raise up the poor. Now, those are the two things that we are working on. Alongside of teaching and training our people, because that's really what our conference is about. Our conference is a training conference. The Power Networking Conference is a training conference. We do not pontificate ad nauseum about our issues. Our people need training. Okay? But alongside of the training to improve their subject matter expertise, to improve their business, to improve their career path, is leadership training, because our people need leadership training. And so we need new kinds of leaders. We talked about that earlier, Mr. Hill. No longer do we need what I call transactional leaders or transitional leaders. We need transformational leadership in the context of our community. And our transformational leaders are our servant leaders. And our servant leaders, they are the most humble, the most reverent, the most open, the most teachable, the most respectful, and the most caring leaders in our community. And our servant leaders must operate around a new definition of leadership. So I've redefined what I believe leadership must be for us in the 21st century. I think to be a leader in the black community in the 21st century, you must be awake and alert and dissatisfied at all times. Let me repeat that for you. This is my definition of leader. To be awake, alert, and dissatisfied at all times. Oh yes, we've come a long way, but we have much further to go. Therefore, I am not happy, but I am motivated by a positive anger directed towards positive change. What do we know about change? We know that you will never change that which you tolerate, and you will only change when you get angry. Malcolm was angry. Garvey was angry. Dr. King was angry. Mandela was angry. Harriet Tubman was angry. We are not angry. If Dr. King would have come back here today, nearly 50 years after his death, he would be ecstatic that Barack Hussein Obama is president. He predicted it. But he would say to black people, is this what I took a bullet for? We are at the bottom of every single statistic that matters in America, and we came over here on the Mayflower. And I don't even want to get into the statistics. You know what they are. I know you know because you're sitting here. Half of our women will not be able to get married. 72% of our children are born out of wedlock. We have more black men in prison on probation and parole than in black colleges. And it goes on and on and on. Yes, we have made significant progress since slavery. Oh yeah. But that ain't the question. The question is, how much progress have we made as compared to white people? Not since slavery. What do our numbers look like? What does our median household wealth and income look like as compared to white people? Not as compared to when we were picking cotton for nothing or sharecropping. Sure, we've made progress since then, but how does that compare to our white counterpart? Well, it doesn't compare in any category you can name. Much of it is from institutionalized racism, systemic racism. There are lots of reasons, and much of this conference is discussed the battles to overcome those reasons. We must fix this. Leadership is action. Leadership is influence. Parenthood, by the way, I believe is the most important leadership responsibility that we will have in life, and it will provide the greatest levels of joy and happiness, and no other success can compensate for failure at home. I believe it begins there. If you screw up your children, You have just written your ticket to a living hell. I promise you. And we're not doing well with this. So I'm going to give you a new measure by which we can call success when it comes to our children. So, because we've got to reduce this down and simplify this so that we will have a measurement that we can look at and feel that we can attain. Here is a new measurement. Here is the new success today for raising a black child. If you can get your child in and out of high school with a diploma, reading at grade level, not at 6th grade level, not at 7th grade level, but reading at 12th grade level, without a jail record and without a child, you have just succeeded. You have laid the foundation for the rest of that child's life. That's success today. That's the new success when it comes to raising our children. But guess what? We're not even doing that. That's not even happening. So how about, let's say, first things first, second things never. Let's do the first thing. Save our children. Because everything we do for our children. Just as everything our parents did, they did for us. So we could put that in the form of a performance goal for all of us responsible black people. According to statistics, there are 2 million plus black people earning $100,000 a year or more, with 2 people, adults in the home. So I say, here's a goal. What if each black person of means accepted the responsibility of saving one child other than their own? One. Now, if you're not doing right by your own children, you're out of this equation. So let's say you're doing right by your own children, as I'm doing right by my own 2 sons. Then I take up the responsibility of picking one more child and saving that child. And what am I asking you to do to save a child? Exactly what I just said to you about what the fundamental goal of our children must be. Get that child, whomever that child may be, in and out of high school with a diploma, reading at grade level, without a criminal record and without a child. You would then save the black child. I didn't say anything about getting them in and out of college. I said just get them in and out of high school reading at grade level. Now, for those of you who work in historically black colleges, as many of you do, you will know, and I've read the statistics on the non-graduating population of historically black colleges, and I know the reason that so many of our children drop out of schools like Albany State University. And you know the reason too. They can't read. Aside from money, they can't read. They graduate or pushed out of high school reading at 6th or 7th grade level, and you cannot make it in college reading at 6th or 7th grade level. You will come, your first day of college, you will be given 6 books to begin to read. The first night. You can't read. You get behind. The next day, you get 3 or 4 more chapters and 6 books. You get further and further behind. Most of our children can't read at grade level. So, we must fix that. And we can fix that. And we have the capacity to fix that, no question about it. It was Peter Drucker. How many of you are familiar with Peter Drucker? Considered one of the greatest business minds of the 20th century. I'm a huge fan of Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker said there are only 3 things that happen naturally in communities. This is the great Peter Drucker. Only 3 things happen naturally in a community: friction, confusion, and underperformance. The rest requires leadership. The rest requires leadership. So what's happening in our community? There is a void of leadership. There's a void of leadership. Now, at the rate I'm going to go over my time, and I'm not going to, because I want to leave time for questions. So I'm going to get right to what I consider to be the meat of what I want to leave with you this evening. I believe that a huge part of the answer to a 21st century trajectory that makes some sense for black people will require a new consciousness. Now let me explain to you what I mean. I'm 70 years old. I know I look 35 or 40, but you know black don't crack, right? And I'm fortunate enough that I grew up with Malcolm X. I grew up on the streets of Brooklyn, New York, Bed-Stuy. So I grew up with Malcolm X in one ear. I mean, I literally stood in front of Malcolm X while he was literally on a soapbox on the corner in Harlem, literally, and just observed. I was a kid, 18 years old, 19 years old. But I looked at this man, and my initial thinking of what he was saying was, is he crazy? Because I grew up with Malcolm in one ear and Dr. King in the other ear, and Smokey Robinson writing the lyrics for my music instead of Lil Wayne. Have you ever compared the lyrics of Smokey Robinson to Lil Wayne? There is no comparison. In fact, I believe that one of the issues that has misdirected so many of our children has been its music. Not all of it. There's some hip hop I absolutely love and can relate to. I refer to, because if you know my history, I'm from a family of 11, 8 boys and 3 girls. My father was a cab driver in Brooklyn, New York. My mother became mentally ill when I was 3, was institutionalized. My father worked 12 to 14 hours a day, couldn't take care of 11 children. So we were orphaned. So I was in an orphanage at 3, stayed in an orphanage from 3 to 5 years old. And because nobody would take 11 children, we were broken up into 3s and put into foster homes. So I spent my entire young life until I aged out at 18 years old, growing up in toxic foster homes. Now, this is not an indictment of foster care. It's an indictment of the foster homes I was in. All right? So I'm a foster kid. And so my life was a living hell. I got a vocational diploma in woodworking, Mr. Hill, because no one thought I was college material. My first job was working the midnight shift at LaGuardia Airport, mopping floors while I paid my way through college, okay? So, one of my favorite rap lines is from Drake. Started from the bottom, now I'm here. I love that. That's exactly right. And that could be applied to probably most of you. Started from the bottom, now we're here. So not all of rap music was toxic, but certainly a significant amount of it. And certainly during the mid stages, not the earliest stages of rap music, which was protests, which talked about the condition of our community. But the next stage of rap music, where it degraded into calling our women and glorified thug life, that was very damaging. Very damaging. But that's another story at another time. So, I grew up in a time when black power was the mantra. John Carlos put on a black glove, raised his fist at the U.S. Olympics. Gil Scott-Heron saying the revolution would not be televised. Stokely Carmichael, for the first time in the history of black people, put the word power and black together. That had never been done before. We had never seen ourselves in such a way that we would even express the concept of black power. We were wearing afros. Even I was trying to wear an afro. And dashikis. We were trying to wear African garb. It was a consciousness about that 60s, 70s movement that produced, I think, a very productive and very successful generation of black people. That period of black power consciousness has passed, and we need a new kind of consciousness, because all that a person achieves and all that they fail to achieve is the results of their thoughts, their consciousness. Because sooner or later you will act out what you really think. And at the end of the day, whatever we create in our consciousness, we will experience in our own life. So, thinking about that, I decided after 5 million written words, 2,000 speeches, being a student and studying black people, that I would craft a consciousness, or a new kind of, or new elements of consciousness that I think that if we adapt will help change us. Now, you don't have to take any notes on this. This is deep stuff, because I've prepared a little card for you. So I call it my little frog card. And on my card are the 5 new consciousness for black people for the 21st century, and the 3 new habits. There are 3 new habits. You see, we don't need any more strategies and tactics. We don't need any more books written about what black people need to do. Read The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. There's 100 pages of that book in the back on a complete plan of what black people need to do. Read Powernomics by Claude Anderson. There's a whole book economically on what black people need to do. Read The Covenant, of which I'm one of the writers. Tavis Smiley and Cornel West organized from the State of Black America. There's a whole book on what black people need to do. They gather on shelves and they gather dust. So we don't need any more books or any more strategies and tactics. We need a few new habits, because we have some bad habits. We really do. We have some really bad habits. We have some habits that are only exclusive to black people. White people don't do this. Only black people do this. Let me give you one. Nielsen, look it up for yourself. Last year came out with a major report on television viewing in America. Black people watch 72 hours of television a week. That's 10 hours of television a day. Only black people do this. We watch 40% more television than any cultural group in the history of America. So let me say this about that. If you are a Negro watching 10 hours of television a day, you are toast. You are useless. We are simply waiting for you to die, because you add no real value and cannot possibly fill God's purpose for you on this earth, watching 10 hours of that ignorant piece of every day. It's not possible for you to amount to anything. But that's what we do. That's what we do. No one else does that. That's a bad habit. And until we fix that habit, nothing will happen for us. Now, I understand why we do this. Because it is a form of medication. It is a form of being anesthetized. It's a form of assuaging the deep psychological injury that is embedded in our subconscious mind based on our 400 years of very bad treatment. I understand. But we must heal ourselves from that. That's a very bad habit. The other bad habit we have is we don't know who we are. Most black people have no clue how awesome, magnificent, and beautiful and brilliant we really are. Either we have forgotten or we never learned. No one tells us, no one teaches us. That we are the children of the slaves that would not die, that we have the genetic encoding of the great kings and queens of Africa, that we were building pyramids and solving complex engineering problems when other cultures were living in huts eating each other. And in spite of the fact that America kept its foot on our throat for 350 years, we overcame that and we rose like the phoenix. So if everything happens for a reason and serves us in some special way, and we will never understand that reason looking forward, and we will only understand it looking backwards, if that is in fact true, and it is, maybe we were not brought here, maybe we were sent here. Do you believe that God would put his weakest people here to do his toughest job? I don't think so. How could an America who could morally, spiritually, and biblically justify the kidnapping, raping, and pillaging of another two people, natives already in America, and Africans brought to America, have any moral or spiritual grounding? And perhaps had God not sent black people here, America might have self-destructed by now. We are an awesome and powerful people. We are the moral center and spiritual center of this country. We are God's first people. The first human remains, 75,000 years of humans as we know them, were found in the Olduvai Gorge in Ethiopia. If you're hanging out in Ethiopia, brothers and sisters, you're blue-black. I've been to Ethiopia. You ever see Ethiopians? First of all, you'd know one if you saw one, and they're very dark. And for 200,000 years, according to the Smithsonian, life centered around Africa. Life was in Africa. Here's an interesting little side tidbit. That white people did not even appear on the face of the earth until 20,000 years ago. And that's because of the ice age, phenotypes changed, skin color changed, they migrated out of Africa. You know the story. So we have a 200,000 year head start. We are God's first people. And God ain't stupid. But most of us don't even know this. We have no clue. We dabble in, whatever history we dabble in, it's about 400 years old. That's about all we know. There's a much greater story than that. So, our mindset equals our consciousness. Now, you'll notice it, you won't notice because I'll show this to you later. On this card, I call it my frog card. There's a little frog. No, because I don't want you to be distracted. I don't want you looking at it while I'm talking about it. There's a little frog on this card. And you'll notice when you get the card that the frog is sitting in a pot of boiling water. And you all know the story about the boiling frog syndrome. This is science. This is not made up. Science says if you take a frog and put it into a pot of boiling water, it will immediately jump out. But if you take that same frog, we have a metaphor for black people here, if you take that same frog and put it in cool water and slowly turn up the heat, the frog biologically will adjust to the heat of the water and will not even move once the water is boiling. That is the metaphorical state that I believe that black people are in this country at this moment in time. That the heat is being turned up slowly but surely, and we keep adapting. Okay? So, there are 5 new consciousness. The first new consciousness. I believe that going forward, and we can teach, it's very simple on to do how to actualize these things, is that black people need a narrower cultural vision. A narrower cultural vision. We must focus on making black people great first. Not Georgia great, not America great, making us great. You see, China is not trying to make the world great. I promise you that. I've been to China 4 times. China is trying to make China great. Because China believes that when China becomes great and its people become great, the world will become greater. I believe when we maximize our full human potential, America will become greater. In fact, the only way America will be able to realize its full potential is when we are able to maximize our personal greatness as a cultured people. So we must circle the wagons, all hands on deck, and focus on making our people great first. Now, how do we actualize this? We actualize it in the same way Jews have actualized it. I believe that a black person, when they walk into any room, must believe and feel that they are the smartest person in the room. That's what Jews feel. That's what they teach around the kitchen table. They never announce it. They never say it. They never beat their chest, but watch their behavior. We have the potential, without question, that when we walk into any room, to be the smartest person in that room, and to be it with humility, right? Just, of course, perform. So, a narrower cultural vision that focuses on making black people great first. Second mindset. This is deep. This is hard. But this has to happen. If it doesn't happen, it will be difficult for us to get where we're going. We must socially isolate and ostracize those black people of means that do not give back to their own people. You see, if you are a Jew of means and you do not reinvest, give back to Jewish causes, organizations, and issues, you're out. Don't even come to the synagogue. We don't want to hear from you. But that is not the case in our culture. We have no system of socially isolating and ostracizing those black people of means that don't do anything for their own people. This is why a Dr. Dre, who just got $1 billion from Apple, wrote a check for $40 million to USC, the 5th richest endowed university in America, didn't go to USC and ain't an alum, and not write 1 penny for a historically black college. And he has profited from black culture and black people all of his life. But if Dr. Dre were to show up to Albany State University today, not only would you not be able to get on Albany State University's campus, you wouldn't be able to get in the immediate vicinity. We still love Dr. Dre. If he were to go to a typical black church, he would be invited to sit on the stage next to the pastor. We still buy Beats, which is his headphones. So there's no penalty, no punishment. You got $1 billion, you give nothing to your own people, and $40 million to a white university, and that's nothing. It's the 5th richest endowed university in America. Now, it is not an either or. It's why not both? But it's okay. We're okay with that. We love you, Dr. Dre. He's getting ready to come out with a big movie now, right? Straight out of Compton, right? There will be long lines. No punishment. No, now, the brother has a right to give his money to anybody. But we don't have a whole lot of people in our culture that can write a $40 million check and have anything left over. This is one of the reasons we love Oprah. She is constantly reinvesting back into her own people. And until that craziness with Bill Cosby, we loved Bill Cosby for the same reasons. But we do not, that is not a mindset in our culture. We ain't even thinking about that. And therefore, most of our athletes and entertainers who make billions collectively a year, most of them do nothing for their own people. Nothing. Allen Iverson made $200 million. He's homeless. Mike Tyson blew through $200 million. Did nothing. That's wrong. And only we, white folks can't fix that. Only we can fix that. What is the third? We must coalesce around our vision and not just our pain. When Trayvon was killed, we saber-rattled, we marched, we protested, we blogged, we used social media. When Michael Brown was killed, same thing. The incident in New York, thousands and tens of thousands of people, right? When we talk about recycling black dollars, economic literacy, you could hardly get a crowd. Ain't nobody interested in that. We will not coalesce around what is right for us now, and we will only coalesce when somebody puts a bullet in one of our children's heads, when in fact we are being killed in so many other ways. Do you understand that? But we will not coalesce and march and protest around that. We are wounded. We are deeply wounded. We are out of our minds. That's the third. The fourth is we have to connect the dots. I talk about that endlessly. We have to leverage more effectively our collective resources and intellectual capital. Let me say it differently. God has given us, brothers and sisters, in case you haven't noticed, I've noticed. God has given black people every single thing they need to succeed. We have everything we need to succeed except each other. Jews have each other. East Indians have each other. Asians have each other. Arabs have each other. We don't have each other. So God told me to tell you on my flight over here, He ain't giving y'all nothing else. What would you do with it? We will not be getting anything else from God until we demonstrate to God that we can be better stewards of that which we already have. We are a $1.1 trillion economy. I already told you that. There are no black people on the entire planet doing better than we are. There aren't. The richest black people there are. Okay? We have brain power. I did a calculation several years ago on the brain power of just the baby boomer generation. Over the last 30 years, baby boomers have amassed over 500 billion hours of formal education and professional training. Just our generation alone. If you wanted to put a dollar value on that at $10 an hour, and try to get an education or professional training for $10 an hour. But let's be conservative. That would mean that our collective intellectual capital base from one generation alone is worth in excess of $5 trillion. We have surpassed W.E.B. Du Bois' dream, his 90-year-old dream of the talented 10th. Remember that? Remember his dream? If at least 10% of black people could get the finest education possible, he meant a college education, they would then get that education. They would then come back to their own community. And that 10% alone would uplift the entire race. That was Du Bois' dream. We've surpassed that dream. Nearly 18% of black people in America have at least a 4-year college degree or better. So we have surpassed Du Bois' dream by 80%. Said another way, we have a lot of PhDs in our community. We now need some PhDs, right? So we have brain power. And here's an interesting statistic we hear all the time. No, we don't hear all the time. I say it all the time. You don't hear it all the time. 60% of the black workforce in America, 9 million of us, are in executive, managerial, supervisory, professional specialty, vocational, technical, administrative, sales, and business ownership positions. That is an army of potential role models and mentors to help those who are stuck in the cycle of poverty. There is no army in the entire world larger than the army of black people that have succeeded in this country. So make no mistake about it, success runs in our race. We could solve our own unemployment problem. Unemployment, black unemployment is about 1.7 million. There are 1.9 million black-owned businesses. If 1.7 million of those businesses did enough business to employ one person, we'd solve our own unemployment problem, just like the Asians did with Chinese restaurants. White folks can't do that for us. We have to do that. We have to connect the dots, right? We have to connect the dots because many of you have seen me use this little chart. This is a chart to me that symbolizes beautiful, educated, and moneyed black people all over Albany, Georgia, all over America. It could represent black fraternities, sororities. It could represent black churches, historically black organizations. And what you will notice about these beautiful and educated and moneyed black people is that everybody's doing their own thing. Caught up in a Eurocentric value system of rugged individualism, survival of the fittest. Well, it's a trick. There is no power here. This is where all the power is. Whether you're at the center of your own network or part of someone else's network, this is where all the power is. When we connect the dots, we prevent interlopers from coming into our community and taking and destroying at will. When we connect the dots, the schools work better. Right? The crime rate is lower. The economic growth rate is higher when you connect the dots. So, we are a dispersed people. I live in Cleveland, you live in Albany. We have folk in the Caribbean, we have folk in South America, we certainly have folk in Africa. But we don't have to be disconnected. We can handle dispersion, but not disconnection. And so, if you want to analyze the essence of our problem at this moment in time, is that we are a dispersed and disconnected people. This is the final thing that God wants us to learn how to do. Connect the dots. Because we have everything we need to succeed except each other. Connect the dots. Finally, on this mindset piece, the fifth mindset is to think entrepreneurially. to think entrepreneurially, that we must be innovative, and we must move away from the old school mantra of get a good education and get a good job. That's what my parents wanted for me, because that's what my parents, and my father came to this country in the early 1900s from Guyana. He could not get a good education and get a good job in America as a black man. So he drove a cab for 40 years. So what did he want for his children? Get a good education, get a good job. That's not what I wanted for my two sons, 37 and 33. I told them to get a good education and to create a job. Create a job for yourself. Create a job for your children. And if God gives you the power and the glory, create work and jobs for our people. So we must begin the process of thinking entrepreneurially so that we will be able to fulfill the goal of helping black people become the #1 employer of black people. Now, that does not mean, do not misunderstand what I'm saying, that we need all black people owning businesses. No, there should be some Negroes that should not be within 100 yards of owning a business. You've met them, right? We have two categories in our community, business people and business people. And the job of FraserNet is to put the business people out of business, because they're messing it up for those of us that are trying to do serious business. You met black business people, right? They ain't taking care of business, right? They got 3 specialties, and they can't do anything well. So think entrepreneurially, and know that we need black people everywhere. We need black people teaching our children. We need black people in institutions of higher education. And we need black people who are strategically and tactically positioned in the public and private sector workplace so that we can access the resources of those places, because we are a bottom line figure in those institutions, in those corporate arenas. But you heard what I said about my 20 years in the public and private sector. You heard what I said that I'm most proud of with Procter & Gamble, right? Do you remember? Right? My ability, because I was in the position, to get 67 other black people the same experience. Now, finally, and I'm closing and I'll open it up for questions. There are 3 habits that, if we adopt these habits, will change the trajectory of our people and change the trajectory of your life. Now, how do I know this to be true? Because these are the 3 habits I had to take on that changed the trajectory of my life, coming from nothing to ultimately being selected for the Minority Business Hall of Fame and Museum with John H. Johnson, Earl Graves, Bob Johnson, and others. All right, so what are those 3 habits? Number 1, an insatiable appetite for personal growth and development. I said it earlier. An insatiable appetite for personal growth and development. Education is important, but it is not enough. Here's a statistic that I read the other day. I pray to God that it is not true. 67% of African Americans who have graduated from college, once they have graduated from college, never read another book in their life. I just hope it's not true. But let's say that it's just half true. It's not good, right? So, I think this can be actualized by greater knowledge of self to build self-esteem and black self-respect. Black self-respect. Let me say that differently. There are a whole lot of black people that do not like what they see in the mirror. And you see, if I do not love what I see in the mirror when I get up in the morning, if I do not love me, there's no way I can love you. Because when I look at you, you become a reflection of me. That's called low race esteem. And it's driven by low self-esteem. And when you have low race esteem, you don't trust people that look like you. And when you don't trust people that look like you, you don't do business with them. You actually trust your oppressor more than you trust your own. This is science. This is not hyperbole. This is science. We have issues. It's one of the reasons we are not where we are supposed to be. And it emanates from low self-esteem, thus low race esteem, thus we are more suspicious of each other. This is the truth than we are of white people. One of the reasons I do not, our conference is all black, unapologetically black. Why? Here's what I observed, the 70 years of observing black people. You could have 1,500 black people in a room and one white person, and the whole conversation changes. And whatever that person at the podium is saying, black people are looking at the white person to see how the white person responds before they respond. Now take that from a guy that has spoken 2,000 times observing black people's behavior while speaking. And Lord help you if you say something about white people. Right? They will not respond until they see, they will look over at the white person to see what the white person thinks. And then they will respond. So, we have work to do. That's habit number one, an insatiable appetite for personal growth and development. The habit number two, there's a wonderful book, please get it, The Power of Habit. The Power of Habit. The Power of Habit. Awesome book. They talk about Dr. King and the habits that he needed to change in Montgomery in order to make the Montgomery boycott be successful. And that he was failing initially because of the very bad habit that black people had of getting on the bus, come hell or high water, no matter what anybody said. They had a habit of getting on the bus, paying their money, and walking to the back of the bus. And he asked them to change that habit. Don't get on the bus. And what he had to do to get them to change that habit first. Once they changed that habit, the Montgomery boycott was successful. So we have some habits that we need to change. Second habit, a burning desire to be obedient to seeking the answer to this question. A burning desire to seeking the answer to this question. What does God want from me instead of what do I want from life? Two different answers. What is your purpose? Why are you here? What is the purpose of life? The purpose of life is to love, to give, to serve, and to add value to somebody or something. That's the purpose of life. How will you know that what you're doing is from God? How do you know that what you're doing, the work that you're performing, how do you know it's from God? If by what you're doing serves others to a greater extent than it serves you, then it's from God. If it serves only you, I don't know where it's from, but it ain't from God. Right? Right. So, right. So that's seek that answer, and then that's a burning desire to be obedient to seeking the answer to the question, what does God want from me instead of what do I want from life, and then the personal discipline to do the work, to pay the price, and to stay the course. So what are we missing? Two words in there: obedience and discipline. What did our parents beat into us? Obedience and discipline. We have gotten away from that. Part of that is the fault of baby boomers allowing our children to get away from that. That's a whole nother story. Now, finally, the third and final habit is an aggressive, never-ending personal and group focus on equity and ownership. On equity and ownership. We don't own anything. As progressive as Atlanta is, you go to downtown Atlanta, there would only be a microcosm of things in downtown Atlanta that black people own, as progressive as it is. You go to New York, Manhattan, we don't own anything. The Apollo. We don't own anything. Equity and ownership. The tax system was set up for the landowner and the business owner. Why? Because landowners and business owners write the tax laws. So if we're not landowners and we own the fewest number of homes per capita of any cultural group in this country, and we came over here on the Mayflower, and we're not business owners, and we own the fewest number of businesses per capita of any cultural group in this country, and again, we came over here on the Mayflower, you cannot fully exploit the American tax system. Sorry. The American tax system will exploit you. I don't know if anybody ever told you that, but check out the tax codes. I don't even want to begin to tell you what I write off every year as a landowner and a business owner. It would choke a horse as a landowner and a business owner. This is why when Mitt Romney was running for president, didn't want you to see his tax returns, not because he did anything illegal. It's because he maxed out the tax codes as a landowner and a business owner. He didn't want you to see how little taxes he paid because he used the laws. We have no clue. That would be a whole education in and to itself. Okay? So, those are the 3 habits. On the card, I have what I call a litmus test question that every black person must ask themselves, regardless of what they're doing. So if you're getting ready to do something, you got a new job, this is a question that you must ask in the privacy of your own mind every time you do something. It's a question I've been asking myself for 30 years. Here's the question. Is what I'm about to do good for my people? Simple question. Just ask it in the privacy of your own mind. Is what I'm about to do good for my people? I'm about to go knock somebody in the head to steal me some cocaine. Is that good for my people? Ask yourself that question. The title of our Power Networking Conference this year is called Learn, Earn, and Return. Learn, earn, and return. What is the thing that's missing in the context of our community? Of those 3 words, learn, earn, and return. Return. There are many of us learning, and there are many of us earning, but not returning. I think the major lesson for baby boomers, in particular, from Ferguson, is the realization of our need to go back to these communities that we abandoned 50 years ago. It's the only reason you can have a community like Ferguson that has a supermajority of 70% and not one black elected official to solve their own problems. There is no other explanation. Did not have the right leadership, the right consciousness, the right people guiding them. I'm going to close with a prayer. Thank you very much. Do we have time for questions? Oh, my goodness. Huh? I'm going to take a few questions. Sure.
One of it is who's the author of Power of Habit?
I forgot the name. It's in the airport, The Power of Habit. It's a brand new book. I forgot the name. That's right. That's right. Oh, you read it already?
I have it.
Yeah. Great book, isn't it?
New Head.
New Head.
D-U-H-I-Z-E.
And then the second question is, I'm not from Albany, but at any rate, we have a convenience store located right across from our campus. It's run by Indians. Now,
That's who runs convenience stores in our community.
from India. Each time I go in there, it's full of black people, and they're buying beer, wine, lottery tickets, and they have
And single cigarettes.
cigarettes, and
Right.
they have magazines right there in front, and also they have Yes. My question is, not so much what they sell, but why is it that they can locate there, and why couldn't a black person have that business? We just got a dollar store right there. As you come into campus, it's full. Of course, black people don't own it, but the business is, our students go there all the time. My point
Yes.
is, why can't black people own these?
They can. I'll tell you how to do it. I'll tell you how to do it. They absolutely can. Most of these convenience stores are connected to a wholesaler or a franchise-type supplier. So you create an initiative in Albany. It goes to the wholesaler, people who supply these convenience stores, and maybe even they use the convenience store name. In Cleveland, it was Lawson's, all right, or Super B or Super K. And you say, we would like more diversity and inclusion of your convenience store ownership in our neighborhood. And you insist on that. And you have a letter writing campaign. How about 3 letters? That's all it would take. It doesn't take thousands of letters. White people are hypersensitive right now about diversity and inclusion. They are looking harder for you than you are for them. So you go to Dollar General or the other franchises of those kinds of stores, right? You Google their home address, you Google up their franchise, vice president of franchising, and you say, we would like, if you're going to have a Dollar General in our neighborhood, for the owner to be black.
So black people patronize.
Yes, they're owned by white people. Yes. See, if I was a black person, if I was a black person, I would let black people continue. And I owned that Dollar General store in the hood in Albany. I would let black people continue to think a white person owned it.
But that's what my question. The black people support their own.
Yeah, we will. We will. We will. I mean, the truth be known. I mean, you hear all kinds of stuff on this. The truth is known. I've done a lot of research on this. Absolutely, we will support our own. We support black funeral parlors. We support black barbershops, black hair care, black insurance agents, black lawyers, black doctors, black dentists. Yes, if you bring it right and you provide quality, value, and service, and you're about your community, sorry. Yes, we will support you. I did a whole study on that, yes. But if you are a business person and you don't know what you're doing, and you are trying, well, let me say it this way. I recommend that no one buy from a black person just because they're black. That is absolutely stupid. Now, I could tell you that, and you could yes me to death, but you ain't stupid. You're going to spend your money, your hard-earned money, wherever you can get the best quality, value, and service. I learned this from Jews. Jews taught me this. I don't know if you know, but Cleveland is the 5th largest Jewish population in America. Lots of good Jewish friends. Learn lots of wonderful lessons. Jews do not buy from Jews just because they're Jewish. Wrong. If you are a Jew, you're competing with anybody else that provides the subject matter expertise. And if you can provide competitive quality, value, and service, the tiebreaker is, I'm a Jew, you're a Jew, you get the business. All things being equal, though, that's when you get the business. That's the tiebreaker. Right? So I could tell you buy black because it's black, but you ain't stupid. You work too hard for your money. And you're going to shop and you're going to compare, and you should because you're smart. And the tiebreaker is I'm black, you get the business. That's the tiebreaker. That ain't the reason. Does that make sense? When that becomes the reason, right? When because you do quality value, you're going to have a lifelong business. Yes, sir.
How you doing, sir?
Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Bill, for bringing me. My dilemma here in Southwest Georgia right now, we presently don't own one black gas station. We presently don't own one black supermarket.
Right.
And I'm from here. I grew up in Washington Home Project, and I used to go to the corners of Mr. Searles, who was a mentor of mine, and I used to go to York Service Station, Hub Glow, Mr. Johnson, Shorty Service Station, Bud Reed, just over at least 50 all over.
Right.
And and the other part is I started an organization called, it's like a local organizing committee called the Community Builders. But we're having a problem raising capital most of the time because we don't do grants and we just go out and do our own thing.
Sure.
And what's happening is we can't get funded, churches and other organizations, because they are organizations, they don't want to help another organization, so if you go out and say you such and such, and then they won't support. So when he asked the question about support, there seems to be a real laid back, sorry mentality in this area when it comes to supporting one another. The crab syndrome thing going on heavy around here. And I want to know how to deal with it. I write a newspaper article as well, and I try to plug little things and but I want to know how do you deal with it, because when you have symposiums like this, and I sure thank Dr. Hill for having you as well, people won't show up, they won't come, but when you're giving away something.
You want to talk about money?
And everybody wants something for nothing, that kind of thing. So I just, help me. Help me.
I love your question. It's honest.
Yes, sir.
It's honest, it's transparent, and it's, let me give you a simplistic answer to your question to solve that problem. Chase excellence, never chase money. Chase excellence, never chase money. Money will always find excellence. So whatever product or service or store you're providing, especially if it's with our people, especially even more so, because we're hypercritical of each other. You see, we could get screwed over by the white man, and we will never swear off white people. We will see, but one black person do you wrong in business, and you never gonna buy black again, right? 50 white people do you wrong, and you'll be back there tomorrow, right? So we're hard on each other. The way you get around that is excellence, because that is so uncommon in the service of each other. Excellence, excellence. So if you got a restaurant, we just talked about this yesterday. It doesn't have to be really fancy in terms of design and furniture, but the food has got to be slamming, and there's got to be plenty of it, and it's got to be inexpensive, and you'll never have an empty seat, right? It's got to be slamming. So whatever you choose to do, plumbing business, a gas station, a convenience store, it's got to be excellent. And you've got to treat black people with dignity and respect. This is what the Asians have to learn coming into our communities, because culturally, they are sort of a non-smiling kind of grumpy people. And we ain't feeling that, right? And they have to learn that in order to get our business. There are lots of complaints, lots of boycotts of Asian establishments, because Korean establishments, especially because the feeling of disrespect. But once they got that right, and they caucused, and they had meetings, the Koreans did, and they fixed it. And they thrive in our community. So that's what you have. Whatever it is you choose to do with and for black people, you've got to be over the top with excellence. Okay? And you gotta be better than white people. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's fair. But you've been, how long you been black? Yeah, I've been black for 70 years, right? That's what I've learned about black people. You know something different, and you need to school us all. Right? I haven't seen it.
Mr. Fraser, we certainly appreciate you coming and spending this evening with us. It was quite eye-opening, and I'm sure that is the consensus throughout the room. If everyone could join me in giving him a round of applause for that.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for coming as well. Thank you.